Welcome, class of 2014, as you spend your final moments as students of Elmhurst College. In a few minutes, you're going to become the next generation of our alumni, carrying on that proud tradition that reaches back an amazing 143 years to our founding in 1871. Welcome to all of you very patient and very generous parents, relatives, and friends, and greetings to our dedicated faculty and trustees, and to all who've gathered here today to celebrate this once-in-a-lifetime achievement of yours. Each of you soon-to-be graduates has been shaped in your education by the Elmhurst experience. Each Elmhurst experience is different, and yet each one is the same because it stems from our shared mission and our vision and our core values. We've tried to help you form yourself into someone who's a critical consumer and producer of knowledge and culture. A person who rejects materialism while crafting a life philosophy that's appropriate to the complexity of human being. And someone whose compassionate heart leads them to deeds of service to other people and commits to the slow transformation of an often dangerous and unjust world. Mind and heart and hands working together to make you a better person and the world a better place. That's the aim of the Elmhurst experience. So what lies ahead for you? Comparative religion scholars and psychologist Carl Jung tell us that virtually every tradition has a myth about a young hero who faces a crossroad in life, a moment of decision, fraught with danger and the temptation to take the easy path rather than seek out his or her destiny. You stand, I think, on the edge of a similar transition, a similar going out into the world, a world that you know will be challenging at best and has no guarantee of success and lots of examples of failures. But you come armed with a mind that's been trained to think critically and also constructively, a heart that bears compassion and hands that have given service to others. You want to make it, but you don't want to lose your soul in the process. As the title of my marks indicate, it now gets complicated. The world, how else to say it? It will tempt you. While it may be difficult to imagine yourself right now as climbing a career ladder, I assure you, you will, and in fact, you'll probably climb several during your life. And as you succeed in your career, you may feel inclined to think less and conform more in your ideas to whatever it takes to get you where you think you want to go, to reduce the complex to the simple, to seek the magical algorithm of happiness, and to regard your college years as a special, even quaint time in your life when you were encouraged to think big ideas. But big ideas, aren't useful when you have a project to complete, a deadline to meet, and rent to pay. The life of the mind, devoted to elucidating the human condition, can become reduced, I think, to endless problem solving in the interest of a paycheck all too easily. The treadmill of labor looms. And what about values? I think you'll feel tempted to materialism, to cabin off and monetize every human interaction. Maybe you'll exempt your spouse or your parents or your children or even friends from this materialism, or perhaps not. Besides, what's wrong with pursuing a career that leads to wealth? And service? In the working world or in grad school, I think there's little time for service. And if you acquire a family, there's even less time for it. So you may consider dealing out service. For now, you'll say, until I can afford to take the time. And as you start to earn a living, you'll find it's easier to just write a check than volunteer somewhere. You may be tempted to abandon service to those, you may tell yourself, who have fewer demands on their time, like, say, college students. And whatever it is you wind up doing for a living, you'll be tempted to tell yourself that that is your service. And what's wrong with doing well by doing good? The temptations to abandon the life of the mind, the compassion of the heart, and the service of the hands in favor of, respectively, simple ideas, materialistic values, and self-seeking behavior will be real, and they will be constant. And here's the kicker. This can happen not in spite of your success, but because of it. The world will tempt you. Things in the most existential sense will become complicated. And how will you respond? Well, some suggestions. First, apply the skills of mind to meet the world on its own complicated terms. Recall that your liberal arts education here was intentionally general in its orientation. As you become specialized in practice or further studies, don't forget that the world remains complex. The world doesn't know that you're narrowing your focus. So try to think of every significant event from at least 3 points of view, 3 disciplines that you've studied, the points of view of 3 people very unlike yourself. And don't be afraid to say, it's an open question, or I don't know. Keep your love of ideas. You've worked too hard to become uninformed, to become uncritical of what's going on around you and through you. Then there's the heart. The underlying virtue that I endorse, and I think the college has embraced, is respect for the human spirit against materialism. The materialism of our world presses in, I think, at every turn. The human spirit, that thing you share with poor people, with ugly and odd people, people of no earthly use to you whatsoever, is not much valued out there. Elmhurst College offered you a place and a time to think and act in spiritual terms, sometimes in overtly religious terms and other times not. But here's the thing. I would urge you, don't give in to the pressure to talk about people in purely quantitative terms, to find the measure of a person in their annual income or the status of their position. Don't reduce poor people to a statistic on poverty. Don't participate in segregation by subscribing to not in my backyard ideas and practices. Remember, it's not that compassion has little value in a materialistic world. Compassion is the enemy of a materialistic world. You must work and even fight, I think, to sustain the value of compassion, that value that proclaims we're all equal in our needs, to nurture it as your foundational value. Otherwise, it turns into what? Mere pity, the gaze of the powerful upon the abject. The heroes, truly, of our religious and secular traditions have something else called compassion for the poor, feeling with. They do not have pity. Be like them. And as to religion, I say stay open to change. Change to religion from non-religion, or change from one religion to another, or even from religion to none. You may be an atheist now, but don't always assume you'll be that. I think religion at its best celebrates the mystery of life. It doesn't really seek to explain it. Down the road, there's going to be deaths and births of loved ones. And if you feel a religious tug in those moments, I ask, don't dismiss it. It's a sign of your humanity and perhaps a call to become someone new. Having a critical mind and a compassionate heart is going to always produce service. The fate of the world is still your business and your concern. After all, you live in it. The poor and the sick and the socially marginalized are still your concern, because tomorrow they could be you. And in fact, I think reflection and compassion tell us they already are. As to injustice, you may find it harder to know what exactly that looks like. Living in a complex world means acknowledging moral ambiguity and even admitting that your first moral impression was wrong. It's possible that this can mean that you're becoming indebted to a system of injustice yourself for your income, your social standing, your children's future. Perhaps in college you believed capitalism was always an evil. Unions were always good. And now you're not so sure. You thought that lawyers were corrupt, and now you're becoming one. You thought that doctors were kindly healers, and now you're seeking to join the health management world. You're becoming aware that you've always been part of this system, only now you're becoming an active participant, an agent whose life choices are empowering arrangements of power and privilege and access that long preceded you. And how can you identify, then, true injustice? Now, here's where I hope your Elmhurst experience can assist you again. Our college's core values are not window dressing. We've tried very hard to help you internalize them and apply them to your life. Our values of intellectual excellence and community, social responsibility, stewardship and faith, meaning and values are substantive principles for you to take with you, take in you and take as you face the temptations of the mind and the heart and the hands. Be assured there is injustice in the world, not just differences of opinion, but your critical habits of thought and compassion and engagement will help prevent you from becoming dogmatic and too self-assured that you always have justice on your side. So remaining in touch with the socially marginal, I think, is the best way to rightly perceive injustice. You know, people on the margins are really the canaries in our collective coal mine, the ones whose suffering and stories will tell you most of what you need to know to spot injustice in fact and not merely in concept or ideology. Your service to the world may consist of a lifetime of self-critical acts that lead to social change. By bonding with others engaged in this process, and especially by listening to those adversely impacted by the status quo, you're going to gain insight into the injustice before you and around you, see how you may be participating in that unwittingly, and receive the strength to change your life so that your actions will be consonant with your values. I believe that Elmhurst College doesn't just train people to enter the workforce. We don't just aspire to graduate what my predecessor, H. Richard Niebuhr, called, quote unquote, the standard product. We strive to do something more audacious. We aspire to help our students transform themselves, like you, into better human beings, equipped morally, spiritually, and intellectually for whatever awaits them in the world. And if we've succeeded in this at all, your lives are going to be infinitely more complicated for it, but I hope infinitely more human and filled with the joy of lives well lived. In conclusion, as you leave us, keep your minds alert, keep your heart open, and keep your body engaged in just service. And never forget that now you've become part of a larger community, the Elmhurst College community, past and present and future. We won't forget you. If you need us, just call and we'll be there for you. So stay in touch with us. You're alumni and alumni of a remarkable institution that, thanks to you and literally thousands of other graduates, is becoming stronger by the day. Thank you all, and I wish you a rich and complex and complicated life in the years to come.